but we were talking about, or we were coming from Colossians chapter number 3. Colossians chapter number 3, right? And in Colossians chapter number 3, we started at verse number 12. And I am hesitant to start reading this again because I know once I start reading, it's going to be hard for me to make it through to where I'm trying to get to. But I'm going to read it anyhow, because maybe somebody missed um, what we talked about on Monday, and I'm not going to go into the full uh, brevity or detail that I went in on Monday on these first few verses. But I still let me also say, if you did miss it on Monday and you want to go back and watch, or be a part of it, it is available on all my social media platforms. All right, and on let me not say all because it's not on my TikTok. All right, I got to figure out and do better with TikTok. My wife has given me a formula to use, on how to post videos and do. I'm not there. I don't like doing all that kind of stuff. But I'm gonna do better. Um, so I said, let me just get back to my point. It is on most of my social media platforms, with the exception of TikTok and Twitter, only because it is on the station's Twitter page, and I can't put it on multiple Twitter accounts without having multiple devices running. And I already have two devices. I'd need a third device in order to run it on my Twitter. But it is on all my Facebook pages. James W. Chavis is how you can find me on Facebook. It's on my Instagram. Excuse me. It's on my Instagram as James W., which is James W. Chavis. It's also on I Am Encouraged Radio's page, as well as Encouragement Ministries um, Facebook page. All right. So I Am Encouraged Radio has its own Facebook page. Encouragement Ministries has its own Facebook page. And this video is live right now on my page, Encouragement Ministries page, I Am Encouraged Radio's page. It's live on 93.5 KPPM, your community minded station Facebook page, and also on the group that I used to be a part of called the Holy Hot Boys, right? It's live on that page as well. That's the gospel rap group that I used to be a part of. So I'm live on all those Facebook platforms right now. At one time, I'm also live on Twitter. You can find this station on Twitter, and it's live on this station's Twitter page, 93.5 KPPM on Twitter. It is also live on YouTube, and you can go and watch it on YouTube. You can watch all of the other ones that I had preceding this one on YouTube, and all you have to do is go to I Am Encouraged TV. I Am Encouraged TV. All right? Okay. Now that we've got all that clear and out of the way, so that's all the places where you can go back and listen to these, watch these, hear these, be a part of these. Okay. Now, let us go ahead and dive into our word of encouragement because I've already used up 6 of my minutes just doing that intro. So we've been in Colossians chapter number 3, and we started at verse number 12. And I shared with you all on Monday. I have nothing against any other translation or version of this, but today and right now, I want us to look at this in the Amplified Bible, right? In the Amplified Bible. So when you go to the Amplified Bible of Colossians chapter number 3, verse number 12, it says this. It says, so as God's own chosen people who are holy, which means set apart, sanctified for his purpose, and well beloved by God himself, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, which has the power to endure whatever injustice or unpleasantness comes with good temper. Now, again, if we were to pause right there and look at that portion right there, Paul, right here, as he's writing to this church, he is giving us, I believe it's Paul who wrote Colossians, but either way, as the writer is giving instructions to them, he is giving them the formula, right? Yeah, he's giving them the formula on how to overcome all injustice and unpleasantness that comes your way with good temper. Now, here's what I find interesting about that. When you, uh, in particularly, when I look at and study the civil rights movement, I've looked at it from different angles. I've looked at it from different perspectives in different ways. But when you look at the civil rights movement and you study Dr. Martin Luther King, or you study Malcolm X, and I haven't just like I've looked at both of them for quite some time throughout my life, and I've come to understand that both mindsets, right? You know, I completely get and understand, like it is clear and concise, and I get it. I have even thought of acting or reacting the same way. But either way, let me get to my point. Where Malcolm X said, "Hey, if anybody puts their hands on you, then you make sure that they don't put their hands on nobody." Like, I get that. I get that. I was raised in the house with a man. Big shout out, by the way. Big shout out to my stepdad, my dad, Dwight Reeves, who helped to raise me and all that, and I learned a lot from him, and so I'm glad you're recovering and doing well, my man. You definitely were in my prayers on yesterday, and so glad that you're recovering well. So big shout out over in Bossier City, Louisiana, to Mr. Dwight Reeves. All right. But I learned by watching him and listening and the conversations we had what that looks like, what that means, what that understands. See, my stepfather, was the type of man who understood, what that looked like and what that meant. He didn't put up with a lot of stuff off nobody. I'll just say it that way. And he spoke his mind. He still does and says what he's. I mean, so I get it, right? But then also, having been raised in the Baptist church and in the black church, I also get and understand, Dr. Martin Luther King, who said nonviolence, who said that, we're gonna overcome through nonviolence. We're gonna overcome by standing tall, standing firm, by being good, upstanding citizens, and when we see injustice, we're gonna speak out against that injustice, but we're not gonna become violent with you to the point where, like, we're not gonna meet violence with violence, but we're gonna meet injustice and violence and intolerance. That's what I wanted to say. We're gonna meet that with action. And what action is that? We're gonna boycott, right? We'll boycott the major businesses. We'll boycott the bus lines. We'll boycott. We'll march on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. We'll have a march on Washington. Whatever we need to do in a non-violent manner, right? I get both sides of that. But still and all, having that understanding, being raised in a house with Dwight Reeves, right? And also a Dolores Reeves, I understand both sides of that. The nonviolent and the hey, every action deserves equal or opposite reaction, however it goes, right? I get that. But it did not stop the fact that when injustice, when things happened against me, that sometimes it hurt me, right? It threw me off, and it caused me to want to react in such a way, like that. I just, I'll be honest. Sometimes I wanted to take that Malcolm approach. I mean, I'm not even gonna lie about it. I remember the very first fight that I remember having. The first fight I remember having. I had maybe one or maybe some other fights, but like a fight that was uniquely my own was against a white guy, a white boy, right? And I remember he said something that I didn't like. I couldn't abide by it. And I beat him up. I don't even remember the boy's name. I just remember I beat him up. And then I remember later on in life, like I got in a fight with one of my best friends because he used the N word, and I just so I love how, and see, I told y'all this is why I didn't even want to read all these verses, because I was supposed to be getting the verses 15 and 16 and 17, but we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. But that's what I love about the Word of God, is that it gives you a practical, hands-on, real life formula for how to deal with these situations. And what I like about it again is look at this. He tells us, he says, first you've got to put on a heart of compassion, you've got to put on a heart of kindness, a heart of humility and gentleness and patience. And then he tells us, he says, this has the power to endure whatever injustice, unpleasantness, right? Anything that comes your way, you'll be able to conquer it with a good temper. And as I've gotten older, I mean, like I said, some of that was when I was younger. And all of that was young. I hadn't had any fights in my adult life, right? But what I learned, as I got into the Word of God and began to really grasp and understand, is what he's talking about there. That compassion. And then the part that really gets me is that humility. That humility, the compassion and the humility. Those are the two parts that get me. I've always been a fairly patient individual, a fairly patient person. I've never really worried or struggled in that department. But that compassion and humility. I mean, because here again, I mean, let me just. I'm 6'9", now 300 plus pounds, right? And I'm not worried about what nobody can do to me in a one-on-one street fight. You know what I'm saying? Like that's that pride part of me. Like I know I got this. That's again that pride part of me. However, I let me say that's my adult self, right? But my younger self has always been bigger than other folks. My younger self, even as an elementary student, as a middle school, I've always been bigger. I've always been a little stronger. And so in that humility part, and I knew what I was capable of. Always knew what I was capable of. But the humility part is the part that kind of like I had to really come to terms with, because when you're this big, like I've been 6'9", about 6'9" since about the 8th grade, right? Yeah, about the 7th, 8th grade, I've been about this height. I was a lot thinner, mind you, and then that wasn't a problem. But I knew I could handle anybody and then anything that came my way. I wasn't worried about that. But I had to learn somewhere in there, and I struggled for a little while with that humility. You know, like when you 6'9", you standing eye to eye, or even looking down at the top of quite a few adults' heads, and they started talking to you about what you need to do, what I had to learn humility. Like I said, I thank God that He put me in this 6'9" frame body and gave me a mom that's every bit of 5'4", 5, whatever my mom is, and she put the natural fear of God in me. Well, didn't mind, like, boy, and bend me over the sofa and tear my behind up, even at 6'9", right? I'll be honest. I tried my limits, and so I was catching whippings probably until I was about 16, 17. Yeah, I ain't ashamed of that. I was a little hard headed. I can admit that, but that humility, I had to learn that. And then that compassion part, like everybody, now will tell you, "Oh man, you're such a gentle giant," this, that, and the other. I'll be honest, I ain't always been this way. I didn't. Well, I ain't gonna say I hadn't always been this way because I've always been a mild mannered person. But like just having compassion and caring for, I ain't. I didn't. I don't. I have not always, and I still sometimes struggle with caring about. Like that's your issue, not mine. That's your yes. Like when you start talking about compassion, I'd be like, yeah, that's good. No, I hear what y'all going through. That's y'all's thing. And I am quick to just back away and say, look, y'all handle that on your own. That ain't got nothing to do with me. Uh, uh, I, it's so when he talks about the writer here talks about having a heart of compassion. I've always been a kind person, right? I, that compassion, I don't know. I hadn't always and don't always get that part right. The humility, God's had to work with me on that. I ain't gonna lie, and I don't always get it right, even to this day. But I'm a whole lot better than what I used to be. Gentleness, got that right. Patience, I had that. But when certain things would happen, it would test my patience. It would test, my humility, and it would, because like I said, I remember we got off the bus, and he called my best friend. Like I used to play with this guy. I don't know if he was even calling me the N word. He just used the N word, and I just let him have it. Right? I just let him have it. And with such being the case, I just want to say and encourage. I don't know what it is that you may be dealing with or going through. I don't know what it is that may be happening or going on in your life and in your surroundings. But whatever injustice, right? Whatever unpleasantries or unpleasantness comes your way, here's a formula on how you can handle it. Here is the formula on how you can handle it with a good temper. Because I don't get me wrong, like sometimes we can go through this stuff and we can handle it without a good temper, you know. But how do you handle this stuff with a good temper? That's your formula. And then let me continue reading on and really, I've got about 6 minutes. Okay, because I'm gonna try to stretch this out until the 11 o'clock hour. So I've got about 6 minutes that I could stretch this out. All right. So that's verse number 12. Verse number 13: bearing graciously with one another. Now again, see, the formula doesn't just stop at the end of verse 12. It continues on into verse 13. And as you begin to read verse 13, again, it is a continuation of that formula. And now, as we have that continuation happening or going, then you begin to understand and see, and it says, all right, handling with all graciousness, right? There we go. It says handling or bearing graciously, rather, with one another. That's a tough one right there. So first, bearing graciously with one another. Like I've got to give you grace. You know how many people struggle with giving other folks grace. Like failing to recognize, failing to remember they're human as well, failing to recognize and to remember they got their own struggles, their own hangups. I thank God for every person that has ever given me grace. I mean, like y'all know, I've been preaching since I was 8 years old. I'm 38 now, so that means I've been preaching 30 years. In 30 years, I have made some mistakes publicly and privately. And I thank God that everybody who has met me or everybody who knows me to some degree. I won't say every single person, but a lot of folks have given me grace. And so when we start dealing with, and I'm not gonna make it to 16, 17 day. I already see it. Fine. Tomorrow. you know, we got tomorrow. So as we go back to this, thank God for teaching me how to give other folks grace through seeing how my mother, through seeing how leaders of the church, how other folks gave me grace. Grace in my maturity, grace in my, lack of wisdom. I mean, there are so many folks who I can just call on or remember who gave me grace. And when we read verse number 13, when it says bearing graciously with one another, that means I can walk with you. I can go through these situations, these things, these issues, whatever comes up and comes your way, I can do that with you. And when you stumble, when you fall, when you don't get it quite right, I can give you grace. So you know what? That they're only human. It's so many pastors and preachers and who I mean we have drugged through the mud from something they said or maybe a mistake that they made. I mean, like I'm gonna just be honest. There's so many people who drug Creflo A. Dollar through the mud throughout his ministry, but in particular when he said what he said about tithing. Instead of giving him grace and saying, you know what, yeah, he's a veteran in handling the gospel, but even a veteran every now and then may say something that I don't agree with. People drug TD Jakes, right? When he stopped wearing suits and started wearing other stuff. Like I remember even one point my dad, James L. Chavis, right? He talked about Bishop Jakes because in one of his sermons he got down on the floor and he was rolling around and he said, what did he was talking about? And I had a vision of heaven. He was reading and he said, and I also saw the Lord, and I was caught up and I behold, and he was just rolling on the floor. And I remember my dad, kind of just drugged TD Jakes for that, and he was like, I can't even respect them no more. No, that ain't what. And in the midst of all of that, I had to learn, like, yeah, these are seasoned veterans who are preaching the gospel, but they need grace too. They need grace the same as you need grace, the same as I need grace. They need grace too. And if we could take that mentality and deal with that with everybody who we encounter, I'm telling you, we would be a whole lot better off. And I'm gonna have to cut it right there because we're about to hit that 11 o'clock mark. But again, bearing graciously with one another. And then what does it say, that last part? And willingly forgiving each other if one has a cause for complaint against another. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so should you forgive. Man, that's deep. That's deep. Like, that's tough. And I just want to encourage everybody. I want to encourage everybody. Like, that the key part in there, we all like, oh yeah, I forgive them. But we've got to willingly forgive. You know how hard, I mean, I'm gonna have to deal with this tomorrow. But that willingly part, you know how many people struggle with, like, just, I played the song Monday after I finished with Tina Campbell, and it was entitled Too Hard Not To, right? I want to play a song for you today. It's by Kevin LeVar. That's his name. It's by Kevin LeVar, and it simply just says "A Heart That Forgives." Right. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So here is Kevin LeVar with "A Heart That Forgives," and I want to encourage us. Like we've got to get to a place where we just when offenses happen, when things happen, we give grace to people and we just forgive them willingly, quickly. Like, just you know what? I forgive you. It's all good. I, you know, I'm gonna give you the grace right here, because what I really want to give you is my mind. But I'm learning through this formula in Colossians chapter 3, starting in verse 12. I'm learning through this formula how to handle these things so that when injustices, when things happen, I'm learning. Yeah. We're gonna pick this up on tomorrow. We're gonna pick this up on tomorrow. I am really enjoying this study. I am enjoying this time together that we have every day here in the Word. Again, if you have missed any of these, then you can go to my YouTube channel, and you can find them there. And I know some of them, like if you're trying to find Mondays on my YouTube channel, at present you're not going to see it, right? But I tell you what, give me just a couple of minutes here, and I'm gonna have it up and available for you. As a matter of fact, um, I just made it available just now, so you should be able to see it now. All right, so you can go and check it out there. All right, friends. We're gonna go ahead and switch it up real quick. And you say, well, what do you mean switch it up? We're gonna go ahead and go right on into some great gospel music. Then right after this great gospel music, we're gonna come back. All right, we're gonna come back, and I want to do a on this day in history. All right, on this day in history. So keep it locked. We'll do that at about 11:30. So keep it locked. You're tuned in to I Am Encouraged Radio. Now, when I come back at 11:30, I'm also going to give you some information and some details about our 12 Days of Christmas giveaway. We've got a new sponsor that I want to add in and tell you a little bit about. So keep it locked. You're tuned in to 93.5 KPPM. Here's Kevin LeVar with A Heart That Forgives. From the best in gospel